Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Out of the Fog. I'm your host, Laurabel. And since we're still in February, it means we're still celebrating Black History Month. So on today's episode, I'm going to be joined by double board certified dermatologist and associate dean at the Faculty of Medicine, Dr. Bolu Ogunyemi. And we also have a very extra special treat for you today. We will be showing you a video by Atlantic musician King Sway. So sit back, relax, and we'll be right back. Welcome back, everyone. I'm now joined by Dr. Bolu Ogunyemi, who's here to talk to me a little bit about his life experience within Newfoundland and Labrador. Dr. Ogunyemi, thank you for joining me.
Thanks for having me today.
So I want to give our guests to get a chance to get to know you a little bit. So you have a lot of titles that go behind your name and a lot of hats that you happen to wear. So who is Dr. Bolu Ogunyemi?
That's a good question. Well, a lot of my story is, spaced here in Newfoundland and Labrador. So we moved here from Nigeria when I was 3.
Okay.
We moved here, me, my older brother, and my parents. My dad got a job at the university. He's a neurologist, and he's still, practicing full time. So I did all of my, growing up here. Most of my education was here in St. John's. So I grew up in the West End. I did, kindergarten to grade 12. I went away to Ontario for undergrad. Came back for medical school because I wanted to come back not only to learn, in my home, but also eventually to serve patients in Newfoundland and Labrador. And of course, my family was here as well. So I came back. I decided on doing dermatology, and we don't have that specialty here. Okay. So I knew, I had to go away. So I went away for 5 years to BC, and I came back in 2018. I've been here ever since.
Okay. So when a lot of people think about Black people or racialized people in Newfoundland and Labrador, they think like coming in university and then, or coming here for work. But you grew up here. What was that experience like for you? When did your family move here originally?
We moved here in '89, so it was very different then from today, as you can imagine. Back then we were the only family, the only Black family in Cowan Heights. When I graduated elementary school, junior high school, I was always the only Black student. I say when I graduated because my brother was a year ahead of me, so most of the time there were 2 of us, but when I was my senior year, it was always just me. So it's kind of something that we got used to. But I actually, I really enjoyed growing up here. So it's not something that I was really conscious of or aware of, right? Like I just was kind of like one of the guys, and so I actually had a wonderful experience here. So, being the, Black family or the African family wasn't a big part of our experience growing up.
That's so cool to hear, especially because a lot of people would think that would be the standout point of your childhood, and it's really nice to hear that it wasn't. So you went away to school, and then you decided to do medicine. How was that what was the desire behind medicine? Was it because your dad did it, or was that something you always knew you wanted to be into?
Well, I'd say, probably when I was partway through high school, and then I started thinking, oh, what should I do after I graduate? I always liked science and math and that type of thing, but I always really wanted to work with people, and I always wanted to help people, and I always wanted to challenge. So, medicine I saw as a way to mirror those things. I was always interested in being involved in the community and doing teaching, and I knew that medicine, had ways to weave that into practice as well. So I started medicine kind of partway through high school. For sure, my dad's a neurologist, so I did see the fact that he enjoyed the job, and a lot of important roles in the community and with the university. So I think that that was probably a factor as well. So I knew kind of finishing high school. I graduated from Booth in 2004, so I knew finishing high school that I wanted to do medicine. And I was fortunate to get into medicine here, in my preferred location here in St. John's, and to be practicing to serve. It's kind of nice to serve the same patients that you grew up with. So I have lots of, coaches, teachers, dozens and dozens of my friends and dozens of their parents and their children are all my patients rather. So it's kind of come full circle in a way.
Okay, so you are into dermatology. That is your primary practice. What is being a dermatologist like?
Well, I love being a dermatologist. I do just medical dermatology.
Okay.
So, I treat children and adults, and that was important for me to just see a lot of patients. I wanted a specialty where I interact with patients regularly. So, all I do is see patients from when I start work till when I finish. I get to see children and adults. I get to work I mainly work in the community, but I also work in the hospital at times doing consults. I do work in Labrador. I have a visiting clinic in Labrador City.
Oh, wow.
And I've done clinics in smaller areas as well, clinics in Natwashish, clinics in Cheshire, clinics in Clarenville. So it's nice to be able to kind of, work in different parts of Newfoundland and Labrador and, treat different patients. And certainly the patients that are, in smaller centers, they tend to have reduced access to care, poor health outcomes in lots of different ways. So it's nice to be able to kind of narrow that gap a little bit through my work.
So you said you do medical dermatology. So what is the difference? Because I just think dermatology, all one practice. So is there a difference in the two?
Well, it's just a differentiated from cosmetic dermatology.
Okay.
Yeah, so I don't do any cosmetics at all. So lots of, eczema, psoriasis, drug rashes, skin cancer. Those would be a lot of things I see all the time.
Okay, see, that's great, a tidbit for me because I wasn't sure what the difference was. So as well as being a dermatologist, you also have a very active social activist side of you as well. So can you let me know a little bit like how that started and what kind of propels you in that way?
Yeah, it's interesting to reflect on how it started. It's hard to say. I think in terms of leadership, I've always kind of been a student leader. So in grade 4, I ran for student voice at St. Matthew's Elementary. My brother was my campaign manager. I've been fortunate to have a lot of leadership roles, throughout both education and work. But I think that leadership kind of has different lens when you're working in the community, when you're advocating for different groups. I did do a major in sociology in undergrad, so I think where I double majored in sociology and medical sciences, I really understood, my role as a physician, not only the medical side and the science side, but really the patient and the population as a whole. So I think I like to think a lot of my important work is not just day to day, in the clinic or in the hospital, but is outside in the community. I think as doctors, I think that with great privilege comes great responsibility. So as a doctor, we have great privilege to be able to, treat patients and, see them in times when they're very vulnerable. I think that we also have a responsibility, not just to your immediate patients, but the community at large. So that's the reason for my work in leadership and in advocacy and in community work.
Okay, so one, I really like the Spider-Man quote. Touch back onto that. So you've been doing a lot of work in community advocacy, and you've explained to us what drives you. I know you've also recently won awards with the ANC's IDEA Awards that focus on that. So what was that like for you?
It was wonderful and surprising to be honored by the Association for New Canadians. This is a group that my family has been kind of involved with for many years. In our house we just call it the association. Okay. So when we say the association, we know it means the Association for New Canadians. This is a type of association that would have been wonderful for us when we were New Canadians and when we came in the very late 80s. It would be great to have that association. So it's nice that when it's here that we can kind of contribute, whether it's through speaking. My sister's done a lot of work with volunteering for the association. So I think that, it was certainly surprising, but nice to be honored by the association.
Okay, so you've also one of the Newfoundland Labrador Human Rights Award nominees, not this past year, but the last year. So how has that influenced the kind of work you continue to do in the community?
Well, I think it's important that it kind of highlights some of the work. I think that for both of them really the honor shouldn't be on me. It's more of the community in general and the folks that have supported me to kind of to get to this point. But it is important because it highlights the role that we can and should have as physicians, kind of outside of our role in the hospital in treating patients. So I hope that, if anything, inspires kind of more folks, whether they're in the healthcare field or the educational field, to get outside of the classroom, outside of the hospital, and to get in the community and do work, whether it's through speaking, volunteering, mentoring, advocacy, policy work. These are all different ways that I like to affect change besides my day-to-day work, and I hope that other folks, whether they're associated with education or with healthcare, can also kind of do that work.
Okay, so there's a lot more I want to talk to you about, but we're going to take a quick second and take a break, and we'll be right back, everybody. Welcome back. I hope you all got a chance to get a sip of water, because we did, and we're diving right back into a few more questions for Dr. Ogunyemi. So Dr. Ogunyemi, so you mentioned that you grew up here. So when a lot of people think about racialized people within Newfoundland and Labrador, they're usually thinking come from who started in university and are now building communities here. But you have a very different experience. So how have you seen Newfoundland and Labrador change from when you were 3 to now?
There have been lots of changes, and yeah, it's hard. Thinking back, it's been over 30 years. So it's kind of hard to think of that when you've been living through, and been part of the changes in a lot of ways. I think growing up, as I mentioned earlier, where we were the only African family in our whole neighborhood, we were kind of the exception in that way. But now I think it's becoming more and more common. Often there's a critical mass of people from different countries or different parts of the world, and a lot of folks are getting used to it, which is good. I think folks realize that not only do we bring our experience, but we also bring other parts of our culture, knowledge, sometimes clothes and food, etc. And that just serves to really enrich the province overall. So I think there is a greater appreciation for that. So that's very important. And I think that there's more resources into actually supporting this change. So for example, in order to have thriving communities in Newfoundland and Labrador, besides having a job, it's also important for folks to feel welcome in that space. So I think that there has been an increased focus on opportunities to make folks feel welcome and that they belong in Newfoundland and Labrador. So it's really good to see kind of intentional efforts to have that in place here.
So when you are now raising a family here, so what are you excited to see as Newfoundland and Labrador becomes more diverse for your kids? What are you hoping to see when 30 years from now they might be sitting on this couch having a conversation?
That's right, yeah, then there'll be, in the next generation. I mean, yes, it's certainly, more diverse, because I talked about, my experience in school. So when I dropped my older daughter off to Montessori, there's lots of diversity in their class, right? So much more than kind of when I was going to school. So it's nice to see, because I do think that, different people kind of bring different experiences. It's nice when kids grow up and have, someone in their class that looks different from them, because when they grow up, then they'll just be that more, comfortable and willing to engage, and hopefully they'll have reduced bias as well. So it is kind of very comforting to see. So I think that things are definitely on the right trajectory, and I'm really excited to see, where we'll be in the next, 5, 10, 15 years. But as I mentioned, it's not just about having the people or having the numbers. It's also about making sure that folks feel engaged, involved, and that they can actually avail of the same opportunities as other folks that have maybe been in Newfoundland and Labrador for many, many generations.
So since we're in the midst of Black History Month, I want to get your perspective on a few things. So the two current themes for Black History Month, the American theme being Black resistance and the Canadian theme being Ours to Tell. How do these, either both of them or one, resonate for you?
That's very interesting, both of the themes. So, I think Black resistance is one that is probably more familiar with a lot of folks when it comes to Black History Month. Especially when we talk about the American experience, which is distinct from the Canadian experience, but there is overlap as well. Certainly with the American experience, with the civil rights movement and with slavery, Jim Crow, et cetera, strong, very visible resistance has been, the part of the Black experience in the United States, kind of from the get-go. Ours to Tell, I find, kind of really inspiring. I do think that both of them are needed, and they kind of complement each other. For me, Ours to Tell speaks to the fact that there can be many experiences for Black folks and other marginalized or racialized folks. So really, our story, the story is Ours to Tell, just like I have the opportunity to tell my story right now. So I do think that it kind of speaks to all the potential in the future. Of Black folks, of Black Canadians. So I really like that element of it. I think it really speaks to the potential and the agency of Black folks to really thrive in this community. And I do think that resistance is important because for me it speaks to the fact that it's no good saying that, oh, I'm not racist or I'm colorblind. Like, we have to be anti-racist. Like, you need to take an intentional stance, because if someone says they're colorblind or they're not racist, they're just letting racism go on. Like, racism is a treadmill, right? Yeah. It's going to keep on going. So you need to be intentionally anti-racist. And I do think that this has kind of been coming to the fore between the combination between the pandemic and also, with the uprising kind of in 2020 with George Floyd. We realized that the approach of, we don't collect, for example, so I'm in healthcare, so we don't collect healthcare data based on race, and we have, now we have disaggregated data. So once we actually have disaggregated data, we're learning that certain communities have poor outcomes, both in terms of rates of getting COVID, complications from COVID, morbidity, mortality from COVID, and vaccination and uptake. But we wouldn't have known any of this if we just collected the data en masse, right? So for me, it's important to be intentional, to realize that, these barriers exist for many, many reasons. I don't know if we're getting into those, but these barriers exist. But if you don't ask the question and look at the data and find out how different groups are doing, then you can help the different groups.
So that's very true. I really do like the point that you talked about when we look at medicine and the way data is collected, that we didn't have all this information before that represented the way different groups are impacted by different factors of health. So before we round up, I have a few more minutes with you. If you wanted to let someone else know, so there are a lot of now young Black people who are born here, will be raised here, and this will be what they consider home. If you wanted to leave them with something, what would you want them to know as someone who's grown up here?
Well, I think, I think it's important for everyone to use their background, their experience, kind of as a benefit. So when some folks grow up and they look different from everyone else, sometimes they try to hide it or think it's different. But more recently, I thought that it's really a benefit because growing up, we have certain values, traditions, customs from Nigeria that I think are important, and different perspectives that we can bring to the table. But also, I am a Newfoundlander, so I also have that perspective. So I think I actually benefit by having both perspectives, and I can see things in different ways that other folks can't see them. So rather than seeing, being different as something you need to hide or be ashamed of or something keeping you back. Even that change of perspective, you can actually use it to your benefit. And certainly I think that has benefited me in, in many of my, whether it's work or education or leadership. I think having those different perspectives has benefited me in a lot of different ways, and it's also benefiting me in being a father, right? Because my daughters are Newfoundlanders, but they're also Black Newfoundlanders. So it's important to kind of bring those perspectives, and I hope that they'll have an even better experience than I did. So as I mentioned, I came here when I was 3, and now my daughter's 3. So it's just kind of nice to see that full circle. So I hope that everyone can kind of see their whatever their background is and really see it as a positive.
I want to thank you for taking the time out of your practice and coming down and chat with me. Is there one last message you want to leave for our greater audience?
I think that's it. I'm happy to have this opportunity, yes, I'm happy to have this opportunity to be here during Black History Month. So I just like to thank everyone for their time.
Thank you so much. And we'll be right back, everybody. So I promised you at the beginning of this episode a very extra special treat, and that's coming up right now. But before that, I want to let you know a little bit about King Sway, whose video we'll be showing. He is a Zimbabwe-born musician who resides here in Newfoundland and Labrador, who does a little bit of rapping, but his music also transcends just that genre. I can't wait for you guys to see what he's up to. He's also currently working on an album, which will be released later this year. So sit back and check out some of his musical stylings.
For my set, it's for my set, it's for my set, they want my set. All the favors they forget. They forget, man, they forget, man, now they coming at my head. Then they ask why I'm upset. Then they ask why I'm upset, cause like a lady try to check. Nigga, take a look around. All I got is out to get. That's why I do it for my set. Like I do it for my set. I do it for my set. I do it. Nigga, we ain't finished yet. When they hear we never sweat. Never sweat, we never sweat. Like I did it for the sweat. They told me the set would be proud of me. Honestly speaking, they ain't speaking honestly. I gotta listen to how much they down with me. Working this hard just for me and my family. You ain't a bank teller, what are you telling me? I gotta get it, B. Got it coming in like it's ABC. While the rest of y'all still trying to get to me. You cannot get to me. I got the recipe, I got telepathy. You got the sympathy. I wrote a symphony just for the haters that said I could never be anything more than the people preceding me. Now can you see it be? Money so long that I stretch like a limousine. Shout out my homies, man, I feel the energy. Shout out to Paris, to Russell and Kennedy. They want the best for me, baby, you pray for me. Baby, just wait for me, it ain't too late for me. Got what it takes, so what else can you take from me? Blow out my candle like they bought a cake for me. Hold up, just wait on me. Somebody pray for me, I am a player, but I do it faithfully. Shout out to all of my friends that abandoned me. Told me the value of having a family. Got it for my day ones. I'm my set. It's for my set, it's for my set, they want my set. All the favors they forget. They forget, man, they forget, man. Now they coming at my head. Then they ask why I'm upset. Then they ask why I'm upset. Like a lady try to check. Nigga, take a look around. All I got is out to get. That's why I do it for my set. Like I do it for my set. I do it for my set. I do it. Nigga, we ain't finished yet. Bring the heat, we never sweat. Never sweat, we never sweat. We never like I did it for the sweat.
What deserve? Fuck these niggas, man. You know what I'm saying? Whole lot of games, you know what I'm saying, for the culture. And by the way, For y'all fake niggas, man, fuck y'all niggas, know what I'm saying? You know how we do it, man. On this side, we don't want no fake shit. Gang all the way, gang on this side. Yeah.
It's King Sway, I already know, motherfucker. Get murked! Get murked! Get murked! Get murked! Get
I want to thank you all for tuning in again today and joining me for a Black History Month episode. I loved getting to show you another diverse perspective of Newfoundland and Labrador with the Black experience. I also hope you enjoyed King Sway's music video. I can't wait to see you guys again soon, and I hope you have a great rest of your day. See you guys later.
If you have a comment about this program, we'd love to hear it. Email or call us, or send us your feedback through social media.